Let me welcome everybody. Let me welcome you to the Future Trends Forum. This is a very special session because this is our third anniversary. Not 3 sessions, not 3 months, but 3 years. 3 years of operating the Future Trends Forum, a unique project in our modern world. I'm so glad to be here today. I'm so glad to see all of you. And this is going to be fun. We're going to do some goofy stuff. So just to begin with, for those who are new to the forum, those who have been here before, let me explain where it comes from, its background, and then we'll get into celebration and reflection. So to begin with, the forum is a discussion-based venue. It's about conversations concerning the future of education. As a result, it spun out of another project, which is not based in discussion. It came out of the FTTE report, the Future Trends in Technology and Education report. That's a monthly trends analysis that takes a look at major trends reshaping education and technology. And if you haven't seen it, just go to ftte.us and download a few sample issues and subscribe if you like. The whole idea here was to take the idea of futures of education and technology and then talk them out. Rather than their publication, but through conversation face-to-face. Next slide, please. Now, both the forum and the FTT report are part of a broader effort called the Future of Education Observatory. And that's a kind of continuous, multimedia, ongoing, open, participatory effort to explore the future of education and technology. And that includes the forum, it includes the FTT report, it also includes a blog, it includes a book club and a bookstore and more to come. So if you haven't seen it, go to futureofeducation.us and you can learn more. Now, doing this work is possible entirely thanks to the support of very generous people, and we'd like to thank them before we proceed. So first of all, I'd like to thank NYSERNet from New York State. NYSERNet is a nonprofit that helps that state's colleges and universities get online and do great stuff with network computing. It's a wonderful effort. We're very pleased to be involved with them, and we're delighted by their support and very grateful. We're also grateful to Shindig, because as you can see, Shindig makes available this technology we're using right now. So let me just walk you through it so I can show you how it works if you haven't seen it before, or if you're new, or if you'd like a refresher. So where I am right now, and where this slide is just for another minute, this is called the stage. And it's called the stage because everyone involved in the video conference can see and hear everything that comes on up here. And this is where you can join us, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. Now, right below us, if you look, you can see right now a couple of dozen different icons. You can see people like Taylor Kendall or Stephen Ehrman or Maya Gorgieva, or you can see silhouettes of people like Daniel White and of William Harmonic. And each of those represents one or several people logging in from somewhere in the world. And you can connect with them very easily. You can, if you'd like, double click on them. And if their microphone and camera are working, the two of your icons can click together like Legos. You can have your own private audiovisual bubble, which is pretty neat. But there are a lot of ways to communicate here in Shindig. Now, look to the very bottom of the screen. You'll see a white strip running along it, and that has a few different buttons and options. So if you click on the first one, the left edge, you'll see a number. I think it's 27. If you click on that, up will pop 2 different windows. The one on the left will give you a film strip view of people. So you can see all kinds of folks. You can see Paul Henley, you can see Doug Geyer, you can see Rita Marie Conrad. And that's really useful if you want to learn a little bit more about people. On the right side of that is a chat box, and that includes the roughly 20 people who've signed in today with you. So you can just use that to ask questions, compare notes about the weather. And if you haven't already done so, just take a second and type in who you are and where you are today. Now, go back to that white strip. The chat box will run throughout, but also in that white strip, you'll see a question mark with a circle around it. If you click that, that'll let you type in a question or a comment that I can read to everybody on the screen. And you can also flash it on the screen so everyone can see it, which is pretty neat. Now, next to that question mark, you'll see a raised hand button. Now, if you click that, that tells us you'd like to join us up on stage. So if your camera is working, if you've got a microphone that's turned on, and if you're in a space where you can talk out loud, click that and you can join us. It's really easy to do. In fact, we can have up to 4 people appear at one time. So that'll be me plus up to 3 of you. Consider it a kind of DIY pop-up panel. through video conference technology. So you can use the raised hand, you can use the question mark, you can use the chat box, all kinds of ways to have conversations. That's what the forum is about. And we're really grateful to Shindig for providing the technology that makes it all work. And we're also grateful to our wonderful supporters on Patreon. If you haven't been there, Patreon is a crowdfunding site like Kickstarter or GoFundMe. It lets you collaboratively support someone doing some kind of work that you like. In that case, it's our work on the future of education. So you can see here from this screen that we have right now more than 110 people who signed up to contribute as little as $1 a month to keep the lights on, keep the machine running. And here are wonderful folks like Paul McConaughey, Robin DeRosa, Tom Hames, Hugh Blackmer, Corey S., Hudson Baird, Colleen Carvey, Kristen Eshelman, Sean Summer, Michael O'Shea, Michael Slade, Matthew Henry, Rodney Hargis, Karen Cagliosa, a whole bunch of great people. So if you'd like to join them, we'd really appreciate it. You go to patreon.com/Brian Alexander. So that's who supports us. That's where this comes from. That's what this whole forum is about. And today, we turn 3 years old, which is extraordinary. It's amazing to think about. I'll tell you a story about that. We don't have any guest for today. We don't have a program planned out. We don't have any slides to show you. Instead, what we want to do is two things. We want just to hang out and be merry. In fact, if you have something to drink, open it now, knock it back. If you have champagne, even better. If you have wonderful, goofy costumes, this hat, by the way, is not that goofy. This morning it was -20 when I got up, so that's an appropriate kind of hat. You'll also see I'm wearing my outdoor coat, so I am nice and warm, although I'll take it off a bit. It's getting kind of warm in here. And we're also going to reflect and think back on how this forum has worked. What's it been for you? What kind of value has it had? What have you liked? And what would you like to do in the future? What would you like to do next? This is all about you. So first of all, I just want to I request everybody, if you could, just to toast each other. First of all, thank you for making the Future Transform work. Thank you for contributing your thoughts, your ideas, your social media contributions, for sharing the word, for being great participants in this wonderful collaborative project. To the Future Transform community, a toast. Now, if you'd like to join us up on stage, click the raised hand button. You can tell we're pretty informal today. And if you want, right next to me, you should see a kind of teal colored box with the word join and the word podium next to it. So you can just click that and appear on stage right away. In the chat box, people are saying all kinds of great things. So I want to say thank you to all of them. Thanks to Roxanne. Thanks to Wendy. Thank you so much. Hey, Tom.
Hello. Hear me all right?
Oh, I can hear you just fine.
Just one. Congratulations all around.
Yeah, thank you.
Something going this long.
It can be.
I know. I've had them fall much shorter. There is a couple things going on I thought the people of this thing might want to hear about.
Sure.
XPRIZE has a kind of a small operations called Hero X. And one of them's open right now. It's got a $300 prize for writing, basically writing a report about what you're doing on the future of electronic education, e-education. Wow. And thought some of the people here might want to get in on that.
Yeah.
And
no, that's
also
that's a Hero X.
Hero X, yeah. It's a subsidiary of XPRIZE. It's kind of little teeny XPRIZEs. And nice. It would be really good on your resume to show you had a winner.
Sure.
The other one's called iGiant. It's $1,000, and it's about the technology and the place of men and women and machines in the future. And that one's for a brand that's worth putting some effort into. Both of them due the end of the month.
Oh, the end of February.
End of February, yeah.
Great. Tom, thank you so much. And thank you for participating all these months. Thank you. Friends, take a look at those contests. Join that X Prize or that iGiant. Take a look at them. Always good to see. I'm just looking here through the crowd. I'm seeing all kinds of splendid headgear. Stephen Ehrman has got a nice shiny cap. And we have Taylor with a cap and a drink. And Vanessa Vale has an amazing hat. My God, that hat is like a garden the size of a house. That's fantastic. And I have to say, Vanessa is one of the wonderful supporters and participants in the forum. She's been with us from the start, and it's just a pleasure to see you again. Also, I have to note that Ben at Skidmore College is wearing a good fur cap, which since he's in upstate New York, he's going to need it. And Maya Gorgieva, who braved sub-zero temperatures to get to her shop this morning in New York, is wearing a really amazing hat. So I'm glad to see all of that. Thank you all. And then Roxanne, great friend of the program. We're so happy for you. You've got amazing colored hair. You've got rainbow hair and look like cat ears. Oh, that's terrific. Like I said, you're all wonderful people. Thank you. Well, to get things rolling even more, and Tom, thank you. By the way, one of the functions of the forum that's really emerged is our ability to share information. People learn all the time. They share great thoughts and great ideas. So I thought what I could do is I could tell you a little story about how this all came to be. It's February. Tomorrow, it's going to be February 1st, 2019. Let me take you back a bit. Let me take you back to 2015, October 2015. In Indianapolis at the Excellent EDUCAUSE conference, I sat down with Shindig's founder and CEO, Stephen Gottlieb. He was an amazing person. You should all get to know him. A real hero of mine. And we sat down to figure out what could we do together? What could we create? On the one hand, how could we really push what we could do with video conferencing technology? And how could we really improve the kind of conversations that people have about education's future? So we thought about this, we bashed around ideas, we brainstormed, we iterated, and we came up with the idea of the forum. We wanted to create a place, an online digital live place, where people could have good, high-quality, thought-provoking conversations about where education and technology were going. You've got to think, this is 2015. This is kind of the year that MOOCs were a huge deal. This is only a few years after the recession hit. This is a year of a lot of chaos and uncertainty in higher education. Also think this is, think where video conferencing was in 2015, not quite where it is now. So we thought about it, we worked on it, we put the ideas together, and we decided to launch the forum. So we got to meet with the wonderful Christopher Downs, who is here right now. And let me just give him a cheer as well. So Christopher Downs, and also to Tara, our wonderful Shindig allies. Thank you so much for your work. We put together a date and a time, arranged for a session. I talked to a lot of people to invite them as guests and finally managed to coax the awesome Audrey Waters to be our first guest. We put up our first URL on the website, so shindig.com/ we put that up. And then I emailed a whole bunch of people and I contacted people over social media and said, this is a new thing. There was nothing like it at the time. And we put this out for February 11th, 2016. And we waited to see what would happen. Anything could have happened. As Tom mentioned, things can collapse. So what happened was dozens of people appeared. Dozens, and then hundreds. And the hundreds over the months that came grew to more than 1,000, and then more than 2,000. You've got to understand that we began the Future Trends Forum totally from scratch, from zero. We had no budget. We had no institutional support. We had no marketing campaign. Didn't really have a website. This was completely from scratch, starting from the basement. And it worked. Whatever we were doing, people wanted to play with. People wanted to participate in. And so as the months went by, we had guest after guest. We had participant after participant, and the numbers grew. In fact, right now, let me give you the most recent update. The total number of people on the email distribution list right now is 2,628. If you go over to our YouTube channel, we have right now 145 recordings. We have right now achieved something extraordinary, a video conference-based community like no other on earth. And along the way, we've learned and we've grown a great deal. I can tell you that I've hosted this from a weird variety of places, from nice studios, from hallways with students walking by, from airports, then from multiple countries, from Finland, from Iceland, from Malta. We've had guests from all over the world, from all kinds of time zones, from Australia to Africa to Europe. And we've tried out different things as well. We've had, for example, we had a follow-up session where we had an extra session from one guest that was Michelle Miller, who was so exciting and had so many great ideas, and people were so crazy about her that we had a second follow-up session just because people wanted to. We've had a complete reboot last year. This is the second phase of the forum, where we added social media components and we grew our whole participation. And we did it all by asking you. We've had a wonderful contest. We had Appy Hour, where people shared their favorite mobile apps, which was a lot of fun and very, very silly and very productive. We learned a great deal about what we could do, mobile technology and learning. We had sad and moving forum sessions. We had one when the New Media Consortium went out of business, it disappeared suddenly. And we had a meeting there where we could talk about it and brainstorm and grieve. We had a meeting right after Charlottesville where we could talk about what happened there. So the forum became a kind of way for people to communicate and think together about current events. We had a collective futuring project where we didn't have any guests, but we brainstormed together for an hour to think about the future of mobile technology. We've even had 2 sessions back to back. We've done live sessions from all kinds of events, from the New Media Consortium lately, to the EDUCAUSE, to campus technology. And on top of that, we've had all kinds of experiments with different ways of using the technology. Along the way, I've learned new ways of interacting with people. I'm a classroom teacher and a speaker, so I've learned how to try to help people talk to each other in this technology. And we've learned all kinds of ways that we can break technology. It has something to do with Shindig. We've learned about firewalls, we've learned about mobile devices, we've learned about ways that we can have sound, good and bad. It's been a long, great, rich learning experience. And along the way, we've gotten more and more attention. People have tried to imitate the forum, which is great. We've had journalists, and for those of you who are here on the stage, welcome. We're glad to see you. We appreciate your hard work. So 3 years. 3 years of all this. We built something extraordinary. Now, to honor that, I'm going to change my hat, because this isn't enough. I'm going to get formal here and have a top hat, just so you know, so you can all appreciate that. That's how far we're going. It's top hat time. So tell me, what do you think about all of this? What's this like for you? Why don't you join us up on stage? So let us know what you think. And, you know, if you don't, I'll call on you. I'll just haul you up on the stage myself, whether you like it or not. And thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Wendy. And hello, Stephen Downs. Wendy mentions that she really enjoyed the hacks presentation from Brian Olendijk. That was a terrific one. Brian is a mad genius, and that was a really, really great one to see. Speaking of mad geniuses, hello, Roxanne. We'll give her a second for the connection to connect in. Hello, Roxanne. How are you doing? Maybe she's having an issue with the connection speed. Can you make it? Maybe your bandwidth is slow. While she's joining. Hi.
Hi, am I on?
You are on.
I'm on the stage. Thank you. And congratulations on your 3rd year anniversary. This has been quite an honor to be part of the Future Trends Forum. I think almost from the beginning, and meeting all of the guests Oh my God, it has been an amazing experience. And I'm going to plug one of my favorite professors, to Michelle Miller, and I have her
Yeah.
textbooks. I'm referring to this a lot for online teaching,
Oh,
and mine's
good,
online.
good.
And all the
Oh,
other
wonderful.
people who have excellent resource books as well. I have them all around me. Let me grab one. Okay. This one.
For more.
I have tons of books. I have tons of books.
Wow.
The forum,
Oh, that's
including
great.
including a signed copy from you. So how impressive is that?
Well, it's impressive that you are here. It's impressive that you have learned so much and contacted and connected so much. Ah, it's wonderful. Thank you so much for being a great fan, a great supporter.
Thanks.
Roxanne is a wonderful person, a real sweetheart. And we're glad to see her here. How about the rest of you? What do you get out of this forum? What do you think of this? What have you enjoyed? What would you like us to do differently? And if you've been a guest before, please feel free to come up on stage. Don't be afraid of it's not a time for you to be shy at any point. Hello, Kisa. Welcome.
Hi there, Brian. How you doing?
Good, Jeff. Where are you coming from today?
Pittsburgh. Your beard is quite inspiring to me. I'm working on it. But
Yours is great.
like I'm getting a similar right here, like this little thing right there. I just, I'd love to hear some people's, since we sort of have no topic except for, that the forum exists. I'd love to hear some things about, predictions people are making. Right now where there's actually a lot of turmoil, small colleges, survival mode for a few. Green Mountain College announced closing. Hampshire College is under difficulty. Mount Ida College closed last year. Newberry. I wonder if people think that the technology has a role in saving some colleges, or if that's actually not the right role, or if technology is going to have a role in differentiating some of these schools. I'd just like to hear comments on that if people are interested. But congratulations on the forum. It's a great thing. I'm glad it exists. So I'll leave the camera space and I'd love to hear other people's comments and ideas.
Well, stay around for a little while if you can, Jeff. And thank you for the good wishes, and thank you for the great prompt. What a good question. So who wants to tackle that? Do we want to have, who wants to think about ways that we can really just use technology to help education survive and thrive? And again, if your camera or mic isn't full tilt, or if you're not in a space where you can talk, just use the chat box or use the question mark. Hey, Tom, what are you thinking? Whoop, hang on, got a moment where we have to connect. Hey, Tom, can you talk? There may be a bandwidth issue at his end. So again, if your mic and your camera are working and your bandwidth is good, please join us.
Coming out. And
there you are.
Certainly they'll be so severe that they will define all the big problems for the next 24 rest of the century. So if you're worried about, well, what's going to happen to this or the colleges or education or whatever, you have to think of it in terms of what we're going to do about global warming. And if anybody's interested, I can provide some detailed things of what we could do and to more directly take on global warming. But if you try to talk about things like the state of colleges without bringing up global warming,
quite true.
You're just going to fail. And so, but if anybody's
good point.
I got lots of points.
Good point, Tom. Thank you. Thank you. We need to be thinking of that. Stephen, can you hear us?
Just fine. Can you hear me?
Beautifully, beautifully.
Awesome.
Good to see you.
So welcome and congratulations from Ottawa.
Thank you.
Where it might be colder than where you are. I'm not sure.
I bet it is.
It was pretty cold today. So, yeah, we're laughing at all those people in Chicago can't take the cold.
Oh, no. You're gonna ruin the reputation Canada has for being nice. You gotta be careful.
Oh, yeah, no, it's been nasty. So, but hey, I'm an old guy. I get to say, I've seen worse.
That's true. That's true.
It is true.
Well, Steve,
But
go ahead.
you're moving away from Vermont.
Yes. Yes.
That distresses me. It bothers me because you seem synonymous with Vermont, or at least you should be.
Well, I appreciate that. For those who haven't heard, my wife and I are moving house. We are moving from Vermont to the Washington, D.C. area. So we should be in a new house in Manassas, Virginia, roughly February 13th or so.
Where
and
is Manassas?
It's about 45 minutes outside of D.C.
North, south? No, it wouldn't be north.
No, it's southwest.
Southwest, so near Fairfax.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
If you want to dive into history, it's the site of the first battle of the U.S. Civil War. A very stupid battle called Bull Run. But we're moving for a lot of reasons, and one is that as much as we love Vermont, as much as we adore what we've been doing, and for those of you who from that sentence doesn't make a lot of sense, my wife and I have been living half off the grid for almost 20 years. We've been raising livestock. We've been heating with firewood. Our water comes from a well. We lose power pretty regularly. We've raised a lot of plants. We've learned a tremendous amount. But we're moving to an urban, area because first we need better infrastructure. This is a problem in Canada as well as the U.S. We're just far behind and accelerating behind, and that's deeply true in Vermont. The second is we need to have better transportation options. So right now it's an hour for us to get almost anywhere. It's an hour and a half to a very, very tiny airport. I fly up to 6 times a month, and so that's nuts. Where we'll be within half an hour of 2 world airports, Dulles and National. That'll make a huge difference. We also have a lot of clients in the DC area, and so that's a fantastic area for that. As a futurist, it gives me a different angle of looking at the future. Instead of looking at a rural, small state, I get to look deeply into the central metropolis of the world's hyperpower, and that really, really changes things.
But you're not going to be in Beijing.
They're not a hyperpower status yet.
I was in Beijing, I guess a year or so ago now. It was my first time, and of course, many people have been to Beijing before me. Yeah. But when I went there, the image that was inescapable was Trantor.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
For those of you who are not familiar with it, Trantor is the galactic capital from Isaac Asimov's Foundation series, and it's a world that is basically a city.
Yeah.
And it was Trantor. It really was. It was
But it gradually gives over to rural over the course of the 3 books. It regresses back to rural.
That's true. That's true.
But this
Hello,
is
Tom.
Trantor. I mean, once China really takes off, I can only imagine what Beijing is going to be, because basically it's a 30 square mile or 30 by 30 grid of skyscrapers. If you can picture that. Now that's a bit of an exaggeration, but we're driving for hours past skyscrapers, with tall apartment buildings, office complexes. I've been to some big cities before. but this was big in a different way from the other big cities. This wasn't sprawl and then shanties up the hill. This
Right.
was 21st century metropolis for for hours at a time.
Mm, mm.
Uh,
Well, we should look carefully at that.
Yeah, look carefully at that. It's so neat. I got to be, living at a time when we changed millennia. I got to be living at a time when we landed on the moon, when the internet came on, and I get to be living at a time when we have this great access point in history, transitioning from the Western-based center of power to, the central-based power center of power of China and India, Southeast Asia, and maybe I might get to see some of the beginnings of Africa, but it might be a while yet. But certainly, maybe we forget India in the conversation when we talk about China, but India, it's not Trantor level yet, but it's pretty impressive too.
And it will be more populous than China within the generation if the trends continue too.
If the trends continue, but since when has that ever happened?
It happens sometimes. But no, this is Stephen. I read the fantastic book by a World Bank economist Branko Milanovic about global inequality, and he had a chapter looking at predictions of inequality. And he went back over about a generation of futurist work, and he found that among other things that people got wrong was no one talked about China. They talked about the Soviet Union, they talked about Europe, they talked about the US, they talked about parts of the developing world, mostly South America, but they just completely ignored China. And he pointed out that Chinese changes are the most significant. He said this is a
Neil Stephenson did.
Yes.
Diamond Age.
Yes.
And
William Gibson, of course.
William Gibson, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not completely invisible, but it's not that. Stephen, before we go too far down that road, I just want to quickly be polite and welcome Tom Haynes, because Tom has been a wonderful friend of the forum since its beginning, a wonderful participant, and he is. Are you in Houston today?
Yes, or Katy, suburb of Houston.
That's right. So it's another nice sense of the geographical distribution of the forum that we have. Canada.
I actually had a suggestion as far as some ideas for the future. So,
well, hold. I think.
Okay.
Stephen, do you mind if Tom floats?
No.
Please.
So something that you've built up a nice community here, and it's nice to have one person in the center that becomes an attractor to that community. And I'm not talking about you, although you are too, but I'm talking about your process of having guests and whatnot. And I'm not saying you discontinue that in any way, shape, or form, because some of the people you've brought onto this have been amazing, and there've been some great conversations. But as an alternative, perhaps periodically, that you would do a targeted flat earth session where you are moderating a brainstorming or focus group kind of event where we're talking about, a particular focused topic. I mean, I know some of the stuff we've been doing in FOCAST, for instance. Why not run one of we're working on that focus group thing right now as far as assessing technology usage. That might be an interesting session to do here.
Oh, we should definitely do that.
And so, and I'm not saying, I know you get pretty booked up with guests, but I think that it would be an interesting, because there are great people that I see these little bubbles down there, and I'm like, oh, I want to talk to so-and-so or whatever, but, I don't want to miss the big conversation either. And so how can we make the smaller conversation part of the bigger conversation better? And one way to do that would be to do a focused event where we're dealing with a particular topic as a group rather than just having, the speaker. So that's my suggestion.
Well, don't go away. I'm bringing up my spreadsheet for the guests to come for 2019. We have guests scheduled into the end of May right now. Um, so we try to schedule as far out as possible, but we'll have a couple of slots in May, and June is open. Now we've done, for those of you who haven't experienced what Tom's talking about before, we've done this a couple of times. We've had a session on a meta one about where the forum should go. We've also had a focused one on mobile technology, where mobile should go. So rather than, as Tom says, rather than having one single guest anchor it, we just had the whole community thinking together, and sometimes that works really well. So Tom, if why don't you follow up by email, and so I can start looking at when the next slot would be. But I think it's a brilliant idea.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I'll make room for someone else.
Well, don't get off yet. We can fit
all right.
4 at a time here. So, and we have that teal colored box, friends. So if you want to click and join us up here, you can definitely do that. Easy as can be.
Is it that way
well,
for you?
It's interesting. You're pointing at, depends on which way the boxes are oriented. So what do you think, friends? We have a lot of questions on the table. We have questions about some new experiments for the forum to offer. We also have questions about the future of higher education embedded in a broader future. If it's climate change, as Tom Riley suggests, or if it's the planetary shift from unipolarity to what's called multipolarity, as Stephen Downes suggests. And what happens to higher education when so many institutions are threatened with survival problems, as people have mentioned? So why don't you join us with your thoughts? Tom?
Just a point. I'm in Baltimore and have
Another
some
Tom.
familiarity with the area. I would be happy to point out some things like the arena stage talks that you ought to, 1, attend, and 2, give. And let me know if somebody in the area would be of help.
Where's that, Tom? In Baltimore?
Baltimore, Maryland, yeah.
Ah, fantastic. It's a great town. Home of the, what's that great museum for visionary art, or outsider art?
Yeah, there's a number of major museums here, but you'll be much closer to what's going on in DC.
Well, thank you, Tom. What's the name of that stage called again?
The one that struck me that you would be a good speaker at is Arena Stage. Their social discussion days. In addition to putting on plays, they also have talks. And
fantastic!
You would fit in real well there.
Well, thank you very much.
By the way, Brian, as a former resident of Northern Virginia, I will point out that sometimes Baltimore's actually easier to get to than D.C. from Fairfax.
That's what I've heard. Now I'm looking forward to that. I have a lot of good friends in Baltimore, and my current publishers in Baltimore, so I'll be happy to do that. So let's thank you for that, Tom. So let's see who else wants to join us. What else would you like to? What else are you thinking about? Where should we go? Either in terms of this little community or in terms of higher education as a whole. And to help spur us thinking about this, Stephen, I want to return to what you were saying about China, and let me raise the dystopia question. It looks like China has figured out a fantastic way to use mobile social devices, social media, to create a very impressive surveillance mechanism, one that looks like the nightmares out of Black Mirror. What do we learn from this besides be careful with devices that you bring to China?
Well, I mean, I'm careful with devices I bring to the United States, and let's be fair about this.
Quite fair. I'm just already here. It's too late.
Yeah, from my perspective, it's equally likely that we'll be hacked from the U.S. or China, or maybe Russia. So, it's important to keep a global view here. It's pretty easy to demonize China, but for all the things that China gets demonized for, I can find a parallel in the United States and in the Western world generally. There's suppression of speech in China. Well, yes, but there's suppression of speech in the United States. It's just different speech. And in my lifetime, you could go to jail for being a communist in the United States. Nowadays, you can go to jail for being Muslim in the United States or being black in the United States. So, it's easy to pick on things, right? And you can pick on things in Canada. I mean, if you're Aboriginal in Regina, watch out, right? So same story. And so nobody's pure here. And that's the first lesson, right? You demonize the other side at your peril.
Always.
Judge not lest you be judged yourself.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're probably going to be judged whether or not you judge, but
yes, but at least I can say I'm not judgy.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good judgment.
So.
But it's just having an open-eyed view of the world, right? I mean, it's easy to think that we have the answers and we've figured things out. But, events in the Western world over, the last half decade should really make it clear that we don't have everything figured out. We could just as easily have an AI dystopia here, right? And all of the things that China's doing pale in comparison to what Facebook's doing, right? The most recent thing yesterday, hiring people, young people, minors, to install VPNs on their systems to basically use them to spy.
I think that one of the things that we commonly fall into the trap on is that, we look at technology and we don't look at culture, and what technology is essentially doing is accelerating cultures that already exist, and without really changing them in some cases. And one of our struggles as societies, whether you're Chinese or American, is how do you step back from that and understand how that is impacting your democracy? I think in the medium term, the United States is probably more adaptable to change than China is, but that doesn't mean we're not going to go through dark periods in order to get there. I think that, technology accelerates the flow of information. You can either use that to create a transparent, open society, or you can use that to create a panopticon. And I see both happening in the United States and in China. Because people don't understand what they're doing with it. And they go, oh, well, this will just make this better. I'm like, yeah, but you're building on something that's flawed to begin with, and you're making it worse because of that, right? A good example, just to pick on my institution right now, is that we just instituted this automated travel system. You used to have to, you did your travel, you had a budget, they approved that based on the legitimacy of the travel, and then afterwards you filed your paperwork and you either got reimbursed or, so on and so forth. Well, now they flipped it, so you have to have everything booked beforehand and everything lined up beforehand before they'll ever book the travel for you. So I'm right now caught between OLC on the one side and HCC on the other. The HCC is demanding that I upload a PDF of the OLC program, which is not finalized, in order to, and also isn't available as a PDF, in order to book the travel in the first place. And they won't budge on that. Well, that's using technology as a panopticon, as opposed to saying, yeah, this is a legit conference and this is how this works. And technology, I mean, I laughed at them when they said, upload your registration form. I'm like, what do you think? I'm printing this out? I'm filling this out online, and stuff like that. So it's this combination of things, and they're used to thinking, and I'm not picking on anybody in the sense that they're used to thinking of this as a paper-driven process, and they haven't wrapped their head around what happens when this becomes technological. And OLC, on the other hand, is going, why are we still making PDFs of a dynamic program that we're still updating?
Right.
And those two conversations are not I'm in the middle of those two conversations at the moment. But I mean, that's just one example, right? right?
Tom, it's a great example from, and that's not hypothetical. I mean, it's a lived example. Let me ask the two of you, as well as everybody else. You mentioned transparency as the alternative to dystopia. Does transparency and openness have been major themes for the forum since we launched? In fact, in the audience, we have the awesome Kurt Bonk, major paladin for openness. Let me ask the two of you, and as well as everybody else, where do you see the forces for transparency and openness now? We can see the forces for their opposites, but what's powering the open world? And while you answer, I have to be open myself.
Oh my God, he's getting
It's a little too open there, Brian.
Yes.
So, and hi, Kurt. Wherever you are, I don't see you, but so yeah, there's. I mean, it's weird because on the one hand we have openness, and that's a big value, and on the other hand we have privacy, and that's a big value. And people forget that privacy is kind of like the opposite of openness. So there's that discussion we have to have. And the unyielding proponents of privacy and the unyielding proponents of openness are often the same people. And as a philosopher, I can handle the contradiction, but I think as a society, we probably can't. But I mean, it's about processes. It's and I don't mean that kind of glibly. I mean that in a very concrete way. You touched on it, the transfer or the change from paper documents to PDFs to data-driven environments. But those are accompanied by changes in management as well. You can't do a top-down management structure on a data-driven environment.
We're trying, believe it or not.
Yeah, but
It's a complete disaster.
Yeah. This is especially the case when we start bringing in questions of authentication and security into it. In my environment, it's a government environment, so we have interdepartmental things. But then, of course, we have our clients are like all of Canada, all the businesses of Canada, the international relations we have. But at the same time, they're trying to lock down the system. Privacy and openness, two fundamental contradictions. So I think that in some way we have to push the data, whatever that is, outside the institution. The institution lives at the edge, and the common, I don't want to say the commons because that's not what I mean, but in the center is the data, and that's where the community is. That's going to be hard for institutions to accept because institutions like to control things. But I mean, the institution has its own contradictions between managing and serving, right? Do your universities manage students or serve students? Well, there's always a lot of pushback to the whole talk of students as customers, and justifiably so, right? But at the same time, they're not like peons you can order around either, although sometimes the universities take that attitude. So again, you have this contradiction, and the contradiction is addressed, and you guys aren't going to like to hear this, by pushing the students out of the university. So the universities are around the edges and the students are in the center. Now that's opposite to how you do it now. But the institutions that are successful in making these transitions, and they will be the small ones that we've been talking about, will be the ones like, like the news industry today. You never thought they could fail. You never thought a major city could have 0 daily newspapers, but there you go.
Right.
You're funny that. In the chat box, Kisa elegantly refers to this as pulling the cord to the edge.
Mm.
So my answer to your question, Brian, is, and I'm going to get, I always get quotes wrong because I don't memorize well, but Martin Luther King had a quote about, the arc of morality is positive, but it's a long arc, or something to that effect. The arc of justice, yes. So and I also, as a political scientist and historian, look at this as like liberalism. I think openness is inevitable. I think it's not going to be even in terms of how you get there, but I think over time that the openness will undermine the attempts to control that information, because we see this all the time. If you try to lock it down, once you digitize it, it's fair game as far as the world is concerned at that point. It's going to come out at some point. It's going to come out. It may not be timely enough to stop, say, the manipulation of an election, but it will come out. And over time, I think we will recognize that, and that general trend will happen. I also believe that, the analogy in my mind is liberalism versus totalitarianism, that the fall of the Soviet Union was a process of openness, where you gradually had this infection from these liberal ideas, starting with the Helsinki Accords, especially in the 1970s, and a lot of the strategies that went into that. And I think, while again, it's not I thought in the 90s, and I'm actually working on a blog about this right now, but I thought in the 90s, like a lot of people, that, hey, you know what, this internet thing is going to usher in this falling of society's barriers, and we're going to be talking to each other and have get rid of these divisions and so on and so forth. And of course, it's not worked out that way. But I think it's a question of time. I think there's people on both sides, and I think just like with a liberal discussion, you have to. And when I say liberal, I mean democratic, not left-wing socialism. I mean classic liberalism. That you constantly have to have this give and take and this push and pull. But I think the tide is gradually going to undermine those silos, because that's the nature of digital technology. And I think the university. I agree with Stephen's comment, but I also think, though, there's an opportunity for the university to reshape itself. I mean, it's a reform versus alternative debate. I think is going to be a big question, but I'm not ready to give up on the benefits of the community that is the learned community, so to speak. That doesn't mean an ivory tower, but it means a cluster of people. And it may be this kind of environment is a learned community as well. And those may become fractured and reshuffled. And we're already seeing that. I mean, I have discussions with people from all over the country, like this one, or even other countries like Canada, that would not have been easier, or not in the same way, would have been much more difficult and asynchronous in 1974. I'd have to know, hey, here's Stephen. I'm going to send him a letter because I know where he is. Here's a piece of paper. I'm going to put this in the mail and send it to you, instead of this chance encounter where we can have the dialogue, right? And so these are all things that are going to, I think, gradually change the name of the game. We have to remember we also live in a bit of a bubble, and that these kind of conversations, more and more people are coming to them, and there's easier things that are happening as far as communications technologies, but most people are still operating in that asynchronous mode. Maybe not to the point of putting stamps on letters, but they're still sending emails. And the thing is, with an email, you have to have an addressee. So sometimes, once you get the conversation started, that's fine. But if I just sort of randomly, listservs are gone, right? I think pretty much.
There's a fun satirical military website called Duffel Blog, which had a cute one of millennial officer calls in airstrike through Snapchat. Doesn't know what to do with a phone.
I heard that the well is actually back.
Well, the well has been trucking along ever since. Gentlemen, I need to, for now, pause your conversation because we're almost out of time. I do want to walk back through a few things that you said. First, thank you, Tom, for bringing this back to higher education in the institutional sense. And Stephen, thank you for bringing it to higher education in the philosophical sense. I'm struck by, on the one hand, Tom's notion of institutional reformation and transformation, and also of Stephen's deep sense of turning education upside down so the students and their data are at the center of it and institutions with the periphery. These are two wildly opposed yet richly intertwined.
No. I disagree. I think 100% what Stephen, I agree with Stephen 100% on that. I just think that it can happen within the walls of the institution as much as it does outside the walls of the institution. That's the point I want to make. That's
what I mean by intertwined yet opposed. I would love to have the two of you back to develop this in some way. I also want to go back to the architecture that Stephen either erected or gestured to. If we're going to be talking about where education is going, especially in terms of technology, we're summoning up very, very deep, long-standing issues that are not just philosophical in the sense of academic philosophy, but foundational to our culture. This wonderful sense of opposing transparency and openness. Transparency and privacy. Perhaps this is a question that we should have as a series of talks and bring a bunch of people in to think about this. Let me just quickly, we have 1 minute left to do this. Let me ask the two of you. What else would you like to see us tackle here in the forum, either in terms of content or in terms of form? Or are you done? I mean, this is plenty.
So I haven't.
That's a hard question, right? Yeah.
I haven't watched enough of them, Brian, because it really depends on the notification hitting me at exactly the right time. So it's a bit hit or miss for me. But with these kind of forums and these kind of discussions, I'm always pushing to see them be more international and more extra institutional. It's really easy to talk in that enclosed community of educational institutions, yet most of the world is happening outside them.
Correct.
And I think it's really easy to fall into these are the really big issues, and they're not. The world will impose. That's not a good thing, a bad thing. It just is an is thing.
Thank you. And Tom, you gave us a very specific marching order. Let me. We have 1 minute left, and we have to do two very important things. So let me thank you both from the diametrically opposed nations of Canada and Texas.
If by the way, just a real quick plug there. I put in the chat bot thing. I just wrote an article on this for eCampus News. So.
Oh, great! Good for you.
So there's a link. There's a link there.
Thank you, friends. I want to thank everybody. This is the Future Transform is a bit like Soil and Green. It's made out of people. And you have all
delicious people.
You have all made this work through all of your contributions, be they through financially supporting us on Patreon, to being great participants like Tom and Stephen just been, and people earlier in this conversation, to helping bring us good guests, to helping spread the word. Let me just ask you to keep spreading the word, keep doing all this great stuff. You keep putting so much in and making this a richer and just more wonderful experience as we go. Thank you all. Let me mention for next week, we go back to a regular forum. We have a wonderful guest. We have the stellar Kathy Davidson. Kathy is a professor at CUNY, City University of New York, who is also a multiple best-selling author of books about the future of education. She's a dynamic, deep thinker, incredibly fast, really funny, just easily one of the most important figures on earth thinking about the future of education. I can't wait to bring him here. This will be a great conversation. So in the meantime, if you'd like to think about that, if you want to look at some of Kathy's books, we have some for sale at the bookstore. We also have ways of continuing this conversation through social media. So on Twitter, you can use the hashtag FTTE. You can use our groups on on Slack or on LinkedIn or Facebook. They have more questions and comments, and you can keep the conversation going. In the meantime, keep thinking about the future of education. It's been 3 glorious years. Let's hear for more years to come. Thanks to everybody. Have a great time. See you online. Bye-bye.